really good to hear the initial description of Congressman Mickey Leland. He loved being called Mickey Leland. Although his full name is George Thomas, Mickey was what he went by because he was a person of the people. Today I stand here in support of HR78, designating the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 4110 Almeda Road on Houston, Texas, as the George Thomas Mickey Leland Post Office Building. I thank the ranking member and the chair of the full committee of the House Oversight and Government Reform for their kindness and their diligence in helping to bring this to the floor of the House. It is appropriate to have it in this year. This is the 25th commemoration of Mickey's death, along with 15 other brave individuals who were flying to provide a life-saving commodities for those who are starving and dying. This bill will acknowledge this 25th year that we have lost him. It will acknowledge the charitableness of his heart. It will acknowledge that he was a person who was willing to sacrifice his own life. And it will acknowledge that he was our fellow colleague in the United States Congress. I'm glad that that is the case. And again, I thank the committee because it's important to note that over the years of this very historic institution, this very hallowed institution, members have come and they have served. And that should be our continuing challenge, to serve America and to serve the world. Mickey was born in November 1944, and he was born to his father, George Thomas, and his mom, Alice Raines, in Lubbock, Texas. Soon, Mom brought the family to Houston, Texas, to our advantage and to our benefit. He thrived in this city, where as a youth, he enjoyed a successful career as a high school sports star at Phyllis Wheatley High School, a historic high school in Houston, Texas, that is still standing. And in fact, as I speak on the floor today, there are advocates trying to preserve the historic old Wheatley High School that is, in fact, a place where Mickey went to school. He entered Texas Southern University in 1965, received a Bachelor of Science degree in pharmacy in 1970. In fact, we used to, as a nickname, call Mickey the pharmacist, but it introduced him who caring about people through health care. He graduated or served after graduation as an instructor. He was so good of clinical pharmacy at TSU for 1 year. But while working at TSU, he established a door-to-door outreach campaign in low-income neighborhoods to educate people about medical care options and to perform preliminary health screenings. Can you imagine? Mickey Leland, a graduate of the Texas Southern University Pharmacy School, was helping those poor people who really had no access to health care. His first effort in public service was to work with the city of Houston health officials to set up community health clinics, so we could call him the father of that. And then, of course, he was an activist trying to improve the civil rights of individuals in the Fifth Ward community, African Americans, and he involved himself in the Jensen Medical Referral Services. In 1972, he was elected to the 88th session of the Texas House of Representatives, and he's one of the first group of African Americans to be elected to that body. Heretofore, prior to the 1965 Voting Rights Act, there were no African Americans of numbers in this Texas state legislature, including the Honorable Barbara Jordan, who was able to be elected as well during that time after the 1965 Voting Rights Act. He was reelected for 2 years, 2 terms, serving until 1978. And then he became, during that tenure, he served on the Senate House Conference Committee as a member of the House Appropriations Committee, and then came to the United States Congress. And he will be remembered in the United States Congress as someone who helped create and support health maintenance organization, HMOs. He did that through the state of Texas. He then came to Congress in January of 1978, was elected in 1978 to the 18th Congressional District, and he served 10 years here. He was chosen as a freshman majority whip and an at-large majority whip, chaired the Congressional Black Caucus, advocated for ethnic diversity through affirmative action and broadcast, served as a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and he and Bill Emerson established the Select Committee on Hunger. Now, my colleagues, this is where his heart showed even larger than it did in his local community. He was an effective spokesperson for ending the suffering of hunger in the United States. And he joined with his good friend, Republican William Bill Emerson, who represented Missouri's 8th Congressional District. His wife later represented him. And through the power of bipartisanship, Mickey Leland and Bill began a mission that still resonates today, that food is a basic right and should never be used as a weapon. Today, we still have the Mickey Leland Hunger Center, of which I serve on the board, and many are still advocating around the world, Mickey Leland fellows who are around the world who are fighting against hunger. Bill died in office, and as I indicated, his wife took his place. But Mickey married in 1983 his wonderful wife, Allison, beautiful sons, Jared David, his twins, Austin Mickey and Cameron George Leland, and his mother, of course, are still living, Alice Raines. In 1983, the midst of the civil war, the nation of Ethiopia experienced the worst famine in nearly 100 years, which led to more than 400,000 deaths. Mickey heard that cry, and so the Speaker of the House asked him to go there to Sudan in 1985. The hunger was so overwhelming, he came back and passed the African Famine and Relief and Recovery Act of 1985. He then continued to serve on the Select Committee on Hunger, led by himself and Bill Emerson, provided $8 million for a vitamin A program. Mickey loved people. He loved solving their problems. And so it was maybe fate that he would die on August 7, 1989, on the side of an Ethiopian mountain with other brave individuals such as Hugh Anderson Johnson Jr., Patrice Yvonne Johnson, two of his aides, Joyce Francis Williams, an aide to Ron Dellums, Robert Wills, a political aide at the American Embassy, Gladys Gilbert, a staff person with USAID, and Thomas Warwick, the USAID representative, and many others who were on that flight with him. I can only say that in closing, it's an honor to introduce this legislation, and I ask my colleagues to support this legislation, not in the honor of a colleague so much as an honor of an American who cared enough about people to be willing to sacrifice his life. I ask my colleagues to support this legislation in the 25th year of the commemoration of the death of the Honorable Mickey Leland, George Thomas Mickey Leland, formerly the late congressperson of the 18th Congressional District. With that, I yield back my time.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, at this point we have no other speakers and would be ready to close.
Gentleman from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would yield myself such time as I might consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I had the good fortune to know former Representative Mickey Leland, and I'm pleased to join my colleagues in the consideration of HR78, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 4110 Almeda Road in Houston, Texas, as the George Thomas Mickey Leland Post Office Building. Born in Lubbock, Texas in 1944, Mickey Leland earned a degree in pharmacy from Texas Southern University in 1970. He quickly became a local civil rights leader, organizing the Black Citizen Action Team in protest against police brutality, while using his medical background to found a door-to-door outreach campaign to educate low-income individuals about their medical care options. In 1972, Mickey continued his health advocacy work in the Texas State House of Representatives, passing legislation to provide better access to affordable medications and HMOs. In 1979, Mickey Leland was elected to Congress as the representative for Texas' 18th District. After serving as the freshman majority whip, Representative Leland later served twice as at-large majority whip, chaired the Congressional Black Caucus from 85 to 87, and was re-elected 5 times. As a member of Congress, Representative Leland advocated for an increase in hiring quotas for women and minorities in the telecommunications industry, and focused much of his attention on alleviating hunger across the globe, particularly in Africa. During the 98th Congress, Representative Leland's efforts led to the creation of the temporary Select Committee on Hunger, which studied the effects of domestic and international hunger and poverty. Tragically, Representative Leland's career was cut short on a trip to Africa during the 1989 congressional recess. While checking on the progress of establishing a refugee camp in Addis Ababa, Representative Leland and 3 of his congressional aides lost their lives when their plane crashed over a mountainous region of Ethiopia. Mr. Speaker, we should pass this bill to honor Mickey Leland's life and career as a tireless advocate for underserved and minority populations, both at home and abroad. I urge passage of H.R. 78 and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Georgia.